can see in the graphics behind me. And I have a pretty rudimentary setup here. It's not very elaborate. And I got my beverage of choice, which is Coke Zero. So shout out to Coca-Cola, because I live in Atlanta. Well, I live in Marietta, but Atlanta, Georgia, we're Coke country. No Pepsi allowed, sorry. All right, name of my podcast is going to be Growing Up Biracial in a Racial America. So I was born in Frankfurt, Germany. As an infant, I was adopted by a remarkable Army couple. And let me just start off by saying how amazing my parents were. They were black. They grew up in the Deep South under Jim Crow. And they raised a biracial young man to not only function in a racial America, but not to be prejudiced one way or the other. Because, as I'll explain during this talk, I had heat from both the white and black community throughout my life. So, I was adopted as an infant and brought over, so I didn't speak German. And I was raised around Fort Eustis Military Base Fort Eustis Military Base is in Newport News, Virginia, but I was raised in Williamsburg, Virginia, which is the neighboring town, kind of like Marietta, where I live, is to Atlanta, Georgia. We're just north. So I was raised around Army base, and everybody was a minority. We had Filipino, Korean. There were quite a few biracial marriages, believe it or not, on base. It was not very uncommon to have a serviceman and a Korean or a Vietnamese wife, or a mixed race relationship. It still wasn't mainstream like it is now. You definitely didn't see it in commercials. And you have to remember, I'm 63, so the biracial marriage I'm in was illegal in the state that I grew up in, which was Virginia, until the early 70s when Loving versus the United States, I think that case, or Loving versus Virginia, became a Supreme Court case and legalized biracial marriages. So, I'm growing up as an Army brat, and one of the cool things about my dad, he was a weapons expert, so unlike a lot of Army brats where they travel city to city wherever their father's stationed, my dad traveled with a piece of weaponry and then came home. And so I didn't travel. I went to the same school, a private Catholic school, Walston Academy, from kindergarten all the way through to graduation of high school. Again, let me just give a shout out to both of my parents who are in heaven now, but they adopted me, and let me tell you, my dad was a staff sergeant, so they did not have a lot of money, but yet I went to a private school. My sister had the opportunity to go to a private school and to a high school where she chose to go to public school. My sister was my sister by adoption and not by, we weren't brother and sister in the same orphanage. We were just adopted out of the same orphanage. As a matter of fact, she was adopted first, and my mother came back and adopted me later when my father was on deployment, so he comes home and he has 2 kids. And that's why my mother always said, you know, I was a mama's boy, and she goes, I know you're a mama's boy because I came and got you. She did. She came and plucked me out of an orphanage, and I am so thankful because I had every opportunity growing up that everyone viewing this had growing up in this country. I became a citizen at 13 because, you know, it just been, you know, I was teased about being a high yellow, which was not a compliment in the black community. It was one of the issues I had, being light-skinned. And my parents said, look, you were adopted, you know, we didn't try to hide it from you, we just didn't make it a big deal. And I feel like I had a birth mother, but I only have one mother and one father, and they're the remarkable couple that raised me, Hattie and James Melvin Dofford. And I owe them everything. I owe them every opportunity I've ever had. Every bit of my life I owe to them because of their generosity and their love. So let me just put that out front. Growing up in Williamsburg, again, I went to a private Catholic school, so I kind of grew up at school in the white community and at home, and I grew up in a black home, so I viewed myself as black. I believe Richard Pryor was right. He said, if you're 1% black, you black. And I felt like I was black. So if you hear me, you know, tell a black joke or tell things you feel maybe you know, I don't have the right to, as a biracial person, to lean on the black community. Just understand I grew up in that community, and, you know, I will tell a black joke because I feel like I've been treated as a black person most of my life. But like I said, I had some issues within the black community because, you know, within the black community, light-skinned blacks and dark-skinned blacks have had a rift. You know, from what I've been told, and, you know, who knows, but Spike Lee got it right. The house slaves were a lot of times mixed because of the things that were going on. In the field slaves, whenever the master got sick, they are sick. Whenever the house slave said the master got sick, we're sick. So, you know, Spike Lee, you nailed it, brother, because there's still a rift between the black, at least there was when I was growing up. I can't say I'm a member of both populations now because, you know, I just view people as they come. And again, I have a biracial household, and now I got a couple of kids that are quarter black, and so we are a multiracial household. We have 6 people in our house currently. Because we do have a foster daughter, and I have my 2 boys, and our mother-in-law. My mother-in-law lives with us, my wife's mother, and of course my wife. So 6 people in our house. It's awesome. We feel so blessed that we are able to facilitate that. So not being accepted by both races. It's just, I would get off the bus and I pick up something I picked up at school, like golly gee, let's go play basketball. And the brothers in the neighborhood are like, hey, we don't do golly gee here. Boom, beat down. And my dad was like, hey, brother, you got to learn how to fight. So he put me in touch with a master sergeant. My dad was an enlisted officer. So he found another enlisted officer to talk boxing at the base. I learned how to box. Let me tell you, I beat the neighborhood bully. I'll never forget his name. I won't say his last name. His first name was Ricky. You know who you are, Ricky. Probably in prison. But anyway, I beat him to his front door after I learned how to box. Never had to deal with bullying again. And I gave my sons the same approach. Bullies aren't crazy. You just have to fight them. And yes, I believe in fighting bullies and not, you know, taking another course. We did have a great incident, though, when my son was being bullied, and one of the assistant principals says to the 2 bullies when she called them in the office, goes, before I talk about what happened with the doctor kid, you guys want to tell me anything? Because I just want to let you know we do have cameras on the bus. She didn't say she had a camera on their bus. And they're like, yeah, we picked on him. Okay, well, you either stop picking on him or you can't ride the bus. If you pick on him at school, you can't attend this school. And I'll send an email to your parents to that effect. And let me tell you, it cleared up the bullying issue real quick. So fisticuffs is not always the best way to handle a bullying issue, as my elementary school in this area proved. But, you know, I tell my boys, you know, if you can't get along, get it on. So that's how I was raised. And I just pray they don't run across somebody with a gun, because when I was growing up, all you get is a busted lip or a bloody nose or a black eye. Now you get shot. So I'm hoping that's not the case. I have one 24-year-old, one 17-year-old currently. But my parents gave me the talk. It was different. Now I'm 63, so you have to think early to mid-70s in Virginia. So my dad told me, because I went to a private school, all my fellow classmates had wealthy and connected parents. My dad said, there is such a thing as privilege, and you don't have it. So here's the deal. If you and your friends get caught doing something, your friends will sleep in their bed. You'll sleep your happy ass in jail. So the judicial system will never treat you fairly, because they won't know what the hell you are. They'll know you're not white. Okay, so he said, you don't want to get in the system, stay the hell out of it. I've never seen the back of a police car from the inside. And it was because of my, you know, again, my incredible parents and their parenting skills. And some were controversial, though. Like my dad had to deal with a lot of service personnel coming back from Vietnam that were post-traumatic stress and drinking and acting out, and beating their wives and all sorts of things. And I remember my dad pouring a drink, and he's like, show me the arms, show me the legs on this drink. And I'm like, sir, I don't understand. He eventually threw the glass in the sink, and it broke, and he goes, don't ever let something without arms and legs control you. I go, damn, to myself. That was a hell of a way to learn that lesson. Do you want to think I've ever struggled with alcohol? Nope. So just so you know, that's one way to handle it if you're wondering how to handle alcohol in your kids. So moving on. Grew up in Williamsburg, Virginia, beautiful one-story town. We had the talk. I will tell you, race was an issue when I was in high school. Like I said, I went to a predominantly white high school. I waited tables in Williamsburg. I was a very good waiter. I waited tables for some of the top restaurants. But I do remember one restaurant in particular where the owner's daughter went to school with me. And like I said, I was one of his top servers. You could tell by the checks. You could tell by the lack of complaints at my tables. As soon as I took his daughter to the movies, not dating, we just went to the movies together. I could do no right. Everything was wrong with the way I worked. I eventually had to quit that restaurant. But in Williamsburg, there are a lot of good restaurants, and I easily found another job. But it let me know that I was not going to get the same treatment as the other servers that were waiting tables in that restaurant. But I did have the privilege of working for a lot of Greek-owned restaurants. I didn't know at the time, but you do a good job at one, you get a job at the other. And they were so amazingly generous. Like one of them, Mr. Nick, he said, I don't think anyone should work for a restaurant and never go hungry. So before we served at the restaurant, we ate as a group in family style. And you didn't have to show up. But if you wanted to eat at the restaurant, you could show up before your shift. And everybody ate. The whole restaurant ate together. When I worked at the Pancake House, we were always given a meal. Never had to pay for a meal. And the Greeks who were on Richmond Road, I hope their restaurants are still doing well. Robert Dothert says, thank you and God bless you. Because I never had to fill out an application for employment. I remember Mr. Majerus was opening up a hotel, and he was one of the Greek restaurant owners. And I said, Mr. Majerus, we're all excited about your hotel. You know, can I work in one of your restaurants? He goes, yeah, of course, Robert. I hear you, good worker. You come, you bring. They talk like mobsters, but they were great people and hardworking, and not criminals that I knew of. And he goes, yeah, you show up, black pants, white shirts. You know, I find something for you to do. Let me tell you, I unloaded buses, did banquets, swept the front lobby, whatever he needed. I did everything but cut grass. But I tell you, the Greeks in Williamsburg and restaurants on Richmond Road, God bless you. God bless you, and thank you for what you did for me growing up. But the thing that really separated my life, I'm a professional trainer now, sports. If you have a child, full stop, get them involved in amateur athletics. It was not only my ID, because I was a jock. Back then, you had the stoners, people that smoked pot, you had the jocks like myself, you had the brainiacs. But back when I was in high school, we all got along. Like, I didn't pick on the brainiacs, and the stoners didn't pick on, you know, anyone, because they didn't care about anything that was going on. But I just don't understand how those groups are segmented now. And anyway, I don't see that connection now. But I was a jock, and sports gave me an identity. I'll tell you a cool thing that happened in high school. I had a girlfriend, and we went to dinner at one of the restaurants, because I love going out to eat. I still do. Because growing up waiting tables, I just love a good meal in a good restaurant with good service. And the owner comes over to the table, and I'm thinking, as a high school student, oh shit, what have I done? So the owner comes up and goes, hey, you Robert Dothert? I'm like, you know, like, yes sir, like, whatever I've done, I'm so sorry. You know, I was thinking that to myself. He goes, well, I heard your team went to state at that private school up the street. That's remarkable, young man. Your meal's on us tonight. I got a comp meal in high school, which to me was like winning the lottery. Come on now. Really? So anyway, that was one of the cool things that happened in sports. And I learned that I could, through the discipline and practice, I could be better. I'll give you a basketball example because that ended in high school and not college. I was shooting out at base because I'd go to the field house, which is like going to Club Med. I could do all sorts of things out there. And I was shooting this. Enlisted guy comes up and goes, man, your shot's horrible. And of course, I'm thinking to myself, thank you, Captain Obvious, but externally, I always had to show respect. Thank you, sir. You have any suggestions? He goes, yeah. Shoot the ball straight up. When you can do that 100 times, then start aiming for the basket. That one piece of advice that I practiced with, I became an all-state player. And trust me, I was not all-state player material. And it was really cool. It was really cool that when I was on base, I was everybody's kid. So I would throw a piece of trash on the ground and somebody would go, hey, boy, pick that up. And they didn't mean boy. in a negative racial way. Back then, you treated everyone like your boy. And I go, yes, sir, and I picked it up because if you got in trouble on base, your ID card had your in my case, my father's name and rank on it so that they knew who to contact. And I remember one time I didn't do something in the field house. I don't think I signed some equipment back in. And the guy goes, do I need to contact Sergeant Dothert? I'm like, no, sir, you don't. Because I did not want them to contact my dad and to have my ass whooped. Because I grew up in a household where you got your ass whooped. Sometimes with switches from trees that I will pull out of the ground to this day when I see them. As Richard Pryor would say, that's an old Richard Pryor joke. I'll let you find it. But yeah, we got marks when we went to school. And when it was your turn to get a spanking, you knew people would follow you to your house and listen to you get a spanking and be out in the street just laughing their ass off. And it was great until it was your turn. So anyway, anybody that's in their 50s or 60s, you know, they know what I'm talking about. You got beat, spanked when you were kids. And you didn't want that to happen a lot, so you didn't do anything to bring it on. All right, I know I'm going all over the place, so let me get back on point here. Let me talk a little bit about growing up near the military base and having a dad that was in the Army. I was an Army brat. Growing up on a military base was like having a pass the Club Med. I could go on base with my ID card and $5 and spend all day. I could get a tray full of food, like a hamburger, a hot dog for a quarter, fries for a quarter, a slice of pie, homemade pie for a quarter, and a drink for a quarter. And I get a tray full of food for $1. And on base, I don't know how it is now. I haven't been on base in many years, but you didn't pay taxes. So if something cost $1, it was $1. So I'd go to the bowling alley. I could bowl for $1, and I could get a tray full of food for $1. Then I'd go watch a movie. Movie was 50 cents. Popcorn was a quarter. Drink was a quarter. For $1, I could go to a movie and have popcorn and a beverage. Now I've spent $4, and I've spent half a day. I mean, it's just remarkable. So anyway, I had that resource available. My high school they never had a lot of money. Even though it was private school and my parents had to pay tuition, they were always doing fundraisers. So we would always do plays, and they would always have the jock like me do a skit or sing a song, and I'm not a good singer. It's almost like comic relief. So it was really great that because my high school was always having fundraisers, I don't have any trouble speaking in public. I mean, if you search my name on YouTube or on Google, you'll get that, you know, I did Fit Nation with CNN. I've done hundreds of product videos. I've done Rotary talks, high school talks. But as long as it's about my topic and I stay in my lane or stay within my knowledge box, I have no fear speaking toward people. I have no fear toward, I don't know how many people, 5 people that watch my little TikTok live or whatever. It doesn't matter because I will stay within my box. Right now, my box is my life experience. So I know more about my life experience than you do. So I'm not nervous about that. But once I go outside, like if I talk politics, there are a lot of people that know more about politics than me, and boy, you can get hammered. And then you get somebody who's religiously off the deep end or politically off the deep end. And as my wife told me, it can become dangerous because my name is my website. So you can find out where I live, you can find out where my business is, you type my name into a Google search bar, and you can find out anything you need to know about me. I remember one time it said, Robert Dother's criminal record. I do not have a criminal record. So I immediately paid the $1.99 to get what Robert Dother's criminal record was. And of course, our search history finds Robert Dother has no current criminal record. I'm like, great. So if they do that with every name and get them to pay $1.99, that's a great scam. All right, moving on. Sports helped me not only in high school years, you know, because you're popular. When you play a sport, you're popular. And back then, you know, I went to a small town, so everybody's famous from a small town. So everywhere I went, people knew who I was. Hey, Rob, you know, it was great. It was really great. And it was good and bad. For example, there was a guy named, well, I won't give his full name. First name was Rex. And he was a thief. He'd steal just for the sake of stealing. He'd be in your house and you have to keep an eye on him because he'd steal something out of your house. But literally, everywhere we go, the store owners would go, hey, Rex, there's nothing here for you to steal. Get out of my store. That was back in the day when you wouldn't get a viral video against you if you had a thief in your store and you told him to hit the road. So, you know, good reputations and bad reputations were really important in a small town because you were your rep. Went from high school to a college called VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. A lot of controversy there because, you know, they were one of the first colleges to walk out on a commencement because of the Israeli Gaza thing. Also, Monument Avenue. I didn't know. I used to run up and down Monument Avenue in college hundreds of times because I was a soccer player. So I would always run to stay in shape. I didn't think two poops about those statues being Confederate soldiers. And again, it may be because I grew up biracial and, you know, Confederate soldiers and seeing a rebel flag in Virginia, it wasn't that uncommon. Gosh, growing up, I remember Dukes of Hazzard. Again, if you're young, you have to Google it. But Dukes of Hazzard was a show where they had this car called the General Lee, and they had a rebel flag on the hood. My black father loved that show. He loved Boss Hogg. He goes, "Look, son, it's Boss Hogg." I'm like, "Dad, I'm watching the same show." But it was great. He loved the Dukes of Hazzard. But anyway, it was about a Southern family. And they had was the car called the Rebel Yell? I can't remember, but it had a rebel flag on it. Anyway, my father loved that show. We loved Hee Haw. Anybody ever watch Hee Haw? It's a bunch of rednecks. And it was hilarious. Ma Pearl and the people that gloom, despair, and agony on me. And then they'd salute one small town like, you know, somewhere in Nebraska, population 47, salute. Anyway, I go off on like, you know, just all the things that my father liked that were not appropriate for a black man in the 70s and 80s to enjoy, but he did. He's one of the few people like Archie Bunker. Of course, he liked George Jefferson more, but he liked Archie Bunker. All right, growing up, I went to VCU, 45,000 students, but because I played a sport, soccer, I had a group of friends. I didn't have to worry about being accepted. I had to stay out of trouble or I'd lose my little partial scholarship. Because I had a scholarship, but it was a soccer scholarship, so it was more like a grant and aid. My parents still had to pay for a lot. And I had my little job that the coach got me. I was checking IDs in the dorms and stuff. So I worked when I was in college, but I didn't come out of college with any student debt. It did take me 5 years to get a 4-year degree. So my last year, I had to spend a year at LaGrange College. So listen to me carefully. My first day in LaGrange, my first day in the state of Georgia, there was a Klan rally in LaGrange. It was 85 or 86. I think it was 80. Still think it was 85 when I moved there. I didn't start my academic year, I think, till 86 because it started after January. But anyway, my first day in LaGrange, Georgia, there was a Klan rally. And I thought it was like some type of movie being shot. And it was a Klan rally in the square in LaGrange when I was in college. Okay? So that was my introduction to the Deep South. Now, I eventually became the manager of the LaGrange Athletic Club, and I was getting death threats. And it was horrible. I'd get notes on my car. My parents were getting calls. We even called the sheriff out to my parents' house because they lived on a rural road. And I said, "Sheriff, I'm not worried about me. I'm moving to Atlanta when I graduate, but I'm worried about my parents." So, like, you don't have to worry about them. We know all the knuckleheads that, you know, are racist and that would potentially harm your parents. They're not going to harm your parents. And I carried a gun, and I was at the time a black belt in martial arts. So I remember when the threat stopped, I had a friend called Paul. Again, I won't use his last name. But he went to school with me. He was in my class at LaGrange. And he came up to me and said, "Robert, what are you doing about all those threats you're getting?" And remember, I'd only told a sheriff that came out to my parents' house and my parents. I didn't tell another living soul. And I told him, I said, "You know what, Paul, I'm paraphrasing, but if you're not willing to believe in yourself and what you feel is right, then you're not fit to live." I said, "I am armed, I'm a black belt, and I'm ready to fight for what I believe." In other words, I can go out with who I want to go out with and do what I want to do. And I'm sure he went back, and of course they assumed I was black. Okay, there wasn't no big biracial population back then, and they didn't even ask. I'm sure they said either leave him alone or kill him, but that M word is crazy. And basically, I've been raised as an Army brat. You fight. If people confront you, you find a way to confront them. So I just wanted you to know that my first experience in Georgia, race was front and center in a big way. So if you've never received a death threat, even if you thought they couldn't carry it out, it'll keep you up at night. Okay, you may be a badass and you think, oh, well, racial, that wouldn't bother me. Well, maybe it wouldn't bother you, but as a high school student in LaGrange, Georgia, in the mid-'80s, it scared me. I was armed and I was a black belt, but I was scared. It scared me to get notes on my car, to get phone calls at my parents' house. The phone calls did stop. The notes did stop, and I guess Paul went back and said, you either kill him or leave him alone, but he ain't playing, and I wasn't. So that was my introduction to the state of Georgia. Now, given that, I love this state. I live here because I love this state. I think that existed in a lot of places in the country. If you move from every area that has racism in it, you'll find yourself living in a lot of different places. So I don't want to throw Georgia under the bus, and I don't want to throw LaGrange, Georgia under the bus, specifically because the owner of the LaGrange Athletic Club was generous enough to make me a manager with his sister was the co-manager. She managed like the child care, the aerobic instructors, things that, he's like, Robert, you don't really want to deal with that stuff. It's back when, you do the manly stuff, let my sister handle like the child care and that sort of thing. So the sexism was real big too in the 80s. Some of you guys have to search that, but it was. So I leave LaGrange College, I come to Atlanta, I work for a company called Sports Life, and it's great because it's fitness. And I'm telling you, fitness was my savior. I mean, in addition to my actual savior. So at 13, I think I told you I became a citizen of the United States. I was also baptized into the Christian faith because of my mother's diligence getting me to go to church. And it's funny, she didn't even care why I went to church. A lot of times I go to vacation Bible school because there was basketball and baseball and a cute girl. She goes, I don't care why you go to church. When you go to church, Christ will get into your heart. He'll find a way in your heart. And he did. And I've been a Jesus freak ever since. So that's a whole nother podcast. But, I would have to say that having remarkable parents was a God thing. I think I could point to so many times in my life where I was on my knees. I remember I had my first fitness center, and I was going out of business. And I just prayed to God. I said, God, look, if you don't want me doing this, you put me out of business. You made me healthy and fairly intelligent. I can find other work. And I would have someone call that day. Hey, Robert, what are you doing down there? Man, I keep getting your flyers, and I keep seeing your little stick signs in the neighborhood. I'm going to come down and see you today. And it would be enough to make payroll. I can tell you at least a dozen times in the 20 years or so that I've been in business for myself that's happened. I can say now that, I run a debt-free business. I train online. I train at my studio in Marietta. And, my wife and I don't have those pressures, but we had the type of marriage where we've actually taken change from a water bottle that we put our change in and cashed out our change to pay our utility bills. So we've had some lean times. So if you're a couple and you going through lean times and you have some lean time, realize that you will get past it. And, we may get there again. There's no guarantee that my wife will keep her job or this gym will stay open. But, we continue to be blessed. And like I said, I'm 63, so I've been blessed for a number of years. And I'm very, very thankful for that. But after, my parents bringing me to Christ, my faith and my belief in my Lord and Savior are paramount. And that has blessed me with the family unit, which allows me to bless other areas of society. So I hope I'm pulling my weight, and I pray that we'll continue to be blessed to do so. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a foster daughter, and we became members of the foster system because of my experience as an orphan. So, I think my headphones may have cut out. Let's see if they cut back in. Let's see. All right, if I'm doing a live, I think my headphones may have cut out. They may have died, so I will put them back in the charger and see if they reset. Sorry about that. Let's see if that works. I am hoping that worked. All right. I hope you can hear me. So after my move to Atlanta, like the dating scene in Atlanta wasn't very biracial.